Yes, hello everyone. It's amazing to see that so many students are showing up. I think it kind of shows the interest. It's a little bit a different event. I think last week we had how to become a an educational psychologist. We did not have that many students showing up for this event as we have for today's event. So super happy that everyone is coming. And especially I think, Samia, I have to start with you because you contacted me on LinkedIn and you said, Andreas, I'm doing these things and you should tell the students about it. And I thought, you know what, why don't you tell the students about it? And then I think you contacted Dahaba and Amal, who then, and I think, yes, who we're also happy to join and said like, yeah, we're happy to kind of tell what we are doing. You all do really interesting things. I think I will not reveal anything. I revealed it a little bit in the description. And then I think Julia, I know because Julia and I we worked a little bit together before she did more interesting stuff. That is kind of how this event came about. I think I had a little bit I struggled a little bit to kind of summarize what this event is about because I feel like there's so many things. I think a lot of students that approach me often I feel a little uncertainty about what happens after I graduate. Even those, I think I have one of my students, he's really that set on doing clinical psychology. He's like, yeah, but what comes after it? I'm not sure what happens if I don't get immediately an assistant psychology position or something like that. And I think that's one of those kind of tell us a little bit about how you made your progress to where you are right now. So we have a little bit this, then what you did in between, and then what you're doing right now. I think I said it in the emails. I always say it, let's not make this a propaganda event. I think Julia said a little bit about things she's frustrated right now with. I think it's really cool that if you share frustrations, anxieties, or something like that, because I think it's not good if, I think we had once an event and the person was like, since I was 4 years old, I knew that I wanted to become this and I set my mind on it. And and I think everybody in the room was like, oh my God. Yeah. So if you're like that, great. I wasn't like that. I stumbled into my career, but just to kind of, I think it's important to just kind of keep it real. Okay. Amal, I would start with you if that's fine. My first question is, okay, so how long is it ago? When did you graduate from City?
It was 2019, so July, so 2 years ago.
Okay, so you graduate. Can you tell us a little bit, like, you graduate, how did you feel after graduating? Did you already have like a plan? You knew exactly what you wanted to do, or did you not have a plan? And how kind of like, what were your first steps after graduating?
Yeah, of course. So for me, I did have a plan of what I wanted to do. So I wanted to pursue a career in counseling psychology. But funnily enough, I only wanted to pursue that career during the final term of third year after doing the counseling psychology module. So it wasn't like a career path I've always had in mind. However, I did feel quite anxious about graduating. The only thing that I had set in stone was that I was going to go in and do the postgraduate certificate in counseling psychology. So that was only like 1 day a week. So I was just trying to think, okay, what do I do the other 4 days of the week? So it was really anxiety provoking. So what I did straight after graduation was I carried on with my retail job until I'd say November 2020. So for 4 months, I was just in retail as well as starting my postgraduate certificate. I then went on and applied for a role as an ABA tutor where I worked closely with children with autism. So I
Okay,
did that role for one
could I
year.
stop you there, Amal? Like, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about ABA therapy. I think so. This is like you basically you volunteered a little bit, and then but you also worked kind of to get money, right? And then yes, like how did you hear about ABA therapy?
Funnily enough, Dahaba was the one who introduced me to ABA therapy. So myself, Dahaba and Samia, we all graduated together and we were all in the same boat of what's next. And I guess like where you're in the final year of uni, you've got so many things to worry about, such as like your dissertation, submissions, deadlines, that I think often life after uni just becomes an afterthought and you think, you know what, I'll sort it out when the time comes. And I'll be honest, it's quite scary. But I think one thing that really helped me was having a good social support and having people who went through similar experiences as me, as I didn't feel like sometimes I think you can beat yourself up and think, okay, if I don't have this job, I'm a failure. And that's not the case. Like it is quite difficult, but I think it's also quite realistic as well and doable. So the hub introduced me to ABA therapy, and what it is it's based on operant conditioning. So it's primarily based on reinforcement theory and changing behaviors. So you're reinforcing positive behaviors and you're not reinforcing negative behaviors. But we opted like for quite a holistic approach. So we worked on not just like educational development, but social and emotional development. As part of the role, I worked one-to-one with a child with autism. I was working in their home. So it's quite a non-traditional role because you're literally working in the homes of the child. It's just you and the child pretty much all day long. So it can be quite lonely. I think one element of this role, reflecting back on it, I did find it quite lonely because I wasn't working as part of a team. And with me, I think I thrive really well as working within a team. But that being said, it was a great experience. I think it teaches you a lot of skills that you feel as though you might already have, but it's good to just develop on them, such as like organization skills, being able to work all day long, balance like multiple priorities as well. So that's what I did for a whole year. I think it's great if you look into
I know
it. Yeah.
like the for becoming an ABA therapist, I think it's still a quite competitive application process, right? I know one of my former students who tried and didn't get it. So you
Hmm.
apply in that, and like how much training do you get, and when do you start working with the children?
So it's quite a long process, definitely. I think it's quite competitive. So you submit an application form, you say, why do you want to work with children, a bit about your knowledge about autism. So I'd strongly recommend Googling ABA, what it is. So I work for a company called UK App. So they're one of the most leading companies with ABA therapy in the UK. I went through a two-stage interview process. So it was first a one-to-one interview, a bit more, it was like your standard interview. Why do you want to do it? They would give you scenario questions as well, some questions about confidentiality. So again, definitely would prepare for it. I think YouTube is a great source for interview questions, as there are loads of people who have gone through similar roles and they just tend to post their experiences of it. I then went to a showing, so where I was observed working directly with a child. So that was another part. It was quite daunting, I guess, but the team are really nice. So I think it didn't really feel like an interview. It felt like more just me meeting another child, I guess. But I guess they just want to see how you'd interact with a child with autism and how you'd interact with other work colleagues as well. And then once you get the place, you do go in a training. I guess the training isn't as in-depth as I thought it'd be. So your training primarily consists of you working directly. You're like shadowing someone who's been trained already. So your shadowing can range. So I think my shadowing was for 4 weeks, and then I was given a case. But a lot of the learning I find comes on the job. So as much as you observe people, I think you learn more when you do it yourself. But I did feel quite supported in the role though.
Okay, so could I think there's one, what's the age range of children you work
Um,
with? Is
So
one
the
question.
youngest child, I think, is 3 years old, and I think they have up to young adults. So there's a big range of the people that you work with.
Okay, and do you feel like the volunteering that you did before, did that help you to get do you think that helped you to get the job, or
With ABA, not so much. With my current AP job, definitely. I think with ABA, it was more anything that you've had in relation to working with children. So, for example, babysitting could count as well. Any like work experience you've done when you're younger. So I think it's more they look at your characteristics as well. And their fundamental requirement is that you have a psychology degree. So I think the psychology degree makes up a lot of the application.
okay, that sounds great. All right, Samya, sorry, I'm like the somehow Zoom rejiggered. Could you tell us a little bit? So I think Amal said something. I think that I hear from a lot of students that I think I hear two things about kind of after graduation, uncertainty and anxiety a little bit, what is next, but also a little bit like an almost like an emotional low that you feel a little bit like you almost you fall into like some kind of, I don't know, motivational hole, black hole, and you're just like, ugh. And I always feel like, okay, it makes sense because all the things you normally did was like deadlines, submitting this, submitting that, and now all this is gone, and you just feel like, okay, like where's my motivation coming from now? How was it for you, Samya?
I think mine was quite bad as well. So I'd say that that summer after we had graduated, it was almost like you can't go back to university again. So it's not like another set structure that you have from September where you have things to do, you have to do this, all that stuff. So for me, it was just a lot of anxiety around actually looking for a job. So at the time as well, I was working retail, and I almost felt a bit like demotivated from actually applying for jobs because it just felt a bit too much for me. So I feel like I did apply, and then sometimes I feel like, you know, actually I don't even have much experience to apply for this role. So I just would like look at it and then be like, you know what, I don't want to do this. And then it kind of, I felt comfortable. I sat with that comfort for quite a while, which was also a bad thing as well. But then after a while, I just started to apply for jobs. A lot of rejections came my way, and that's when
What kind of jobs did you, Samia, what kind of jobs did you start applying for?
So I tried to apply for even support worker roles. I tried to like even so like admin jobs in NHS, like just something that I felt like I can try do. So then I don't feel like, you know, feel like I'm kind of useless kind of thing in that aspect. But then I came across this role, which actually my friend sent to me, and it was a trainee graduate mental health worker role. And what they wanted was some type of experience, work in like working like a mental health setting. So it could have been volunteering, could have been charity, or as well as that, you would have needed to have like a degree as well. So
could you say that again? What's the name of that job title?
trainee graduate mental health worker.
Okay. So, okay, trainee graduate mental health worker. I think mental health worker is a little bit like it's like a support worker, but with a stronger focus on mental health. Could you explain that a little bit, unpack that a little bit?
Yes, of course. So the role itself, what they do is you work, so this was only based in Barnet, Enfield and Haringey, or Camden, Islington NHS Trusts. So nowhere else in London actually do this apart from those two places. And the kind of placements that they put you in is community setting. So that could take the form of like home treatment team, which is basically going into like people's homes to go see if how their well-being is, if they need a welfare check, all these things that you do. Or it could be like working in inpatient. So these are wards for individuals with acute psychiatric needs. So they have acute and enduring mental health illnesses, and you work with them in terms of, you know, you can be an art coordinator, you can just have therapeutic conversations with them, and just basically trying to engage with them. So that's the kind of level that you're at. So it's just trying to see, note down their mental health and mental state examination for the day, if there's any risks associated for the day, if you've had good conversations, how their mood is, and all these things. So that was that in itself I had to go to university for. So I went to Middlesex University, which was a postgraduate diploma. It's all funded, so that was another stress that was like gone, which was really great. And you get paid at band 3, so you get paid to work as well as going to study. I feel like it was very difficult at the time because I had no idea how to balance working and studying at the exact same time, but it almost started to make a lot of sense when you realize that what you're learning at university actually informs your practice. And that was a good balance that later on I started to understand that it doesn't necessarily mean that work is work and study is study, but actually they come hand in hand. So what I did was they take you to 2 placements. Normally it's 1 community placement, 1 inpatient placement, which is 6 months each. However, due to COVID, it was literally like I had to do 2 community placements, which was still fine.
So community placement is like you go to people's homes.
It could be that. So, but the one that I was given was psychiatry liaison, which is in the hospital. So actually, I get to meet individuals who are taken to A&E. So they come in either by the police, they come in willingly, or by the ambulance. So these are people that they either find on the street because they've had a really bad episode and they need a mental health assessment, or it's individuals who are at the verge of ending their life and they really need some support. So it's more like crisis support. So that's one end of it. And then the other part is doing mental health reviews in the wards of the hospital. So individuals with physical health illnesses that have been admitted for quite a long time. So it's just seeing how their mental state is, how do they feel? And, you know, that in itself can take a toll on someone. So it's just basically looking at that. So that was my first full on mental health experience. And I feel like it was a lot, but I enjoyed it.
Sounds very full on. Yes.
Yeah, it was really like, I almost felt like I didn't really believe that I was there at the time. So when I was in the hospital, I was like, wow, like I'm actually really here, like I'm actually doing this. Cool. And but there were a lot of times where if I didn't have a good support system, I don't know how I would be able to cope, because I feel like there's a lot of sensitive information that you hear, there's a lot that you deal with, something might happen to you as well. So all these things were things that I realized not to keep it to myself, but actually have supervision. So I had weekly supervision with my supervisor, who was a consultant psychiatrist at the time. And then I also had my friends who I would always contact. Obviously there's confidentiality, but it's almost like, this is the kind of day I had today, and it was like a lot, so I kind of had to offload. So that really helped. That was the first 6 months, and then due to COVID, I couldn't go to an inpatient ward. So I was placed at IAPT as a graduate mental health worker there. And I did all the assessments over the phone from home. And these were, it's kind of nice because they give you a script, but also you can kind of, there's one thing that I didn't like, it was just the fact that I felt like I had to use the script to basically read everything. But I also found it quite helpful because I learned a lot of skills speaking to clients in this way, and a lot of like communication skills, and building empathy over the phone as well. Very difficult. You don't realize it, but you need body language. You need to be able to be there with the person. So it's all these skills I learned. So that's what I did. That's the rest of my time there. And alongside that, I think we had to do like 6 modules that we submitted over that time. And
okay. So could you just, for me, like your timeline, you graduated, and then how long did it take you to secure this graduate trainee mental health support worker role, or is it the other way? I'm not sure. Is that
trainee graduate mental health
trainee
worker?
Graduate? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
But I applied for the job before I actually graduated. So I applied in June, but they took a while to get back to me. So that I just thought that I was never even going to get that, to be honest with you. And it was only up until September where I had the interview of 2019. And around November or December is when I found out that I actually got it. So it was quite a while that the process of actually getting onto the job itself was really difficult.
Okay.
So I started in January 2020. So that's when the course starts, and that's exactly when everything starts. So they train you really well. There's a lot of training that's involved. You do a training called PMVA, which is Prevention Management Violence and Aggression Training. You go there for a week, and they literally teach you exactly how to defend yourself and also how to restrain individuals in a safe manner.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. It sounds very exciting, but also very intense. It sounds like, okay, I mean, thereafter, whether you want to work at that kind of job or not, right? Okay. And then, so just between January and the summer, you worked like just to kind of earn some money, or what did you do while waiting for being admitted and then starting the job?
So I just worked in retail. I was working at the Apple store at the time. So I was working there whilst I was in my final year, and then I just continued. I took more hours and continued to work there. I feel like it was just something that I was doing. I feel like if I didn't have a job at all, it would be more, again, anxiety provoking. So it was just something off my mind.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds great. Okay. Yes. All right. I can't wait to hear more what happened thereafter. Dahaba, could you tell us a little bit about, before we come to Julia, who's like, I think will be very different in some ways, but tell us a little bit, how was it for you, graduation, and then what happens next? How did you feel?
So I think I kind of started my journey during the final year. So once I got into third year, I was just a bit mindful of, oh, I think someone just entered. Just give me a moment.
No problem. Okay, shall we just maybe switch, Julia, and you jump in, and then we hopefully, I'm not sure what did Dahaba say? I'm not sure what happened.
I think she just got someone into the room where she was talking.
Okay.
So
Okay. Julia, maybe okay. So we have it's like very different. I think your story. Sorry, Dahaba, is that okay? Do you want to maybe, I don't know, let's just finish with Dahaba and then Julia.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, my journey kind of began in my final year. I think at the beginning of my final year, I just became really mindful of how my education was coming to an end, and I think I was quite anxious about what I was going to do next. So what I started doing was I had to kind of just figure out what I just have a rough idea of what I wanted to do. So after doing like intense research into the different careers of clinical psychology, I found that educational psychology is one that quite resonated with me. So I knew that I wanted to go into educational psychology, which I think was quite useful. But I remember now thinking as far as like first year and second year, I used to think about maybe doing going into finance. That's something that I quite considered as well, or maybe working for one of the big four companies. I also considered going into clinical psychology as well. But I think throughout my journey, it's just quite changed drastically. And in my final year, it became quite apparent to me that I wanted to do educational psychology.
So could I ask, like, that's a wide range, right? Like, how did you figure it out? Because from finance to a clinical, so I've like, I mean, education, it's not, has nothing to do with finance, but it's like, it's like somewhat related to clinical. But how did you figure out, oh, I'm more interested in educational rather than clinical? Like, what was it? Did you have an aha moment where you just woke up and was like, oh, educational?
Yeah, no, I think what it is when, for me, when I was looking into the different careers, I felt like, for example, with finance, the nature just seemed a bit too competitive for me. And I felt like that wasn't something that I wanted to go into because of the competitive nature that I had. So, I think that was first year. So during first year, that's what I kind of thought about. And I just thought, yeah, I would want to do something that's more tailored around psychology. So that's how I ruled out finance. Then I was thinking about clinical, but then again, I felt like I just wanted to work within schools and with children as well, and work with those around the children, and not always like deliver interventions with the child or the person. So I actually wasn't even aware of educational psychology, or like I didn't really research much into it. So as I researched into educational psychology, I just thought, you know what, this like career path just ticks everything for me. It gives me an opportunity to work with children. It gives me an opportunity to kind of work with the systems around the child. So for example, the school, you get to work with the parents as well. And is the best way to describe it is like it involves a lot of consultation. So just like liaising and communicating with parents and the schools to kind of try and understand the child, and so they can, and helping the systems around the child to kind of best support the child. So when I kind of found out about that, I just thought, this is it for me. And I think the reason why it took me quite long to reach that is because in the undergraduate, we didn't really learn about educational psychology. I think that's something that's not really taught. I know we have clinical modules, and we also have counselling modules. So it wasn't easy for me to kind of make that decision because I just didn't have the information available to me. But once I've actually gathered the information by myself, I figured that this is the career that I wanted.
So, okay, that sounds great. If anyone is interested in learning more about educational psychology, we had last week's event was how to become an educational psychologist. We had an educational psychologist there talking about it. You can watch the recording, but that's great. Yeah, we don't have a module on educational psychology. It's very true, right? And sometimes just one event might not be enough. I always think it's a great job, but it's like, maybe it's because I'm interested in educational psychology. And I think I understand correctly that you recommended doing the ABAs to Amal. Is that correct? Yes,
Yeah,
that's the...
In terms of ABA, it was very similar with Amal, and I think Amal quite nicely kind of summarized everything that ABA entails. But I just wanted to say that, in my final years, I did do some voluntary work. I've worked with this organization called Coach Bright, and it's a coaching role, and I think I kind of came across it through a careers event. And it's a voluntary role. So what you do is you get to work with children in the final years of their school. I think final 2 years, or yeah. So towards the end of their school, and you kind of just coach them, help them with management, teach them about study techniques, and everything that you kind of cover in cognitive psychology, and how to like improve your memory in terms of like long-term memory, what the effective studies are. So I think that opportunity just really allowed me to kind of share my knowledge of psychology with children, and it also gave me an opportunity to work with children. in school settings. And then I think I also worked with this organization called Pursuing Independent Paths.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in short, PIP. And I don't know, Andreas, if it was one of your careers event that they came to as well.
Yeah, I always invite him. Oh, what's his name? He's such a lovely guy. Yes, I always feel like when he talks about this place, it's like, oh, I want to volunteer there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's good?
Yeah. So I actually again came across the opportunity in a careers event that City hosted, and I quite enjoyed it. It kind of so what they do is they have adults with learning disabilities. They have a range of disabilities. Some have autism and ADHD, Down syndrome, and all sorts. For me, it gave me a great insight of how to use psychology in application. And that's when I kind of first learned about how different people are. Like someone can have the same diagnosis, but the way that they exhibit it or the way that they show it is so different. And it really just took, at university, we kind of just learned this as like things that we need to memorize. Like you need to know what are the symptoms of maybe, for example, autism, or like how do they exhibit or how do they show or what the characteristics are. But I think this role just really gave me an insight into actually seeing it in real life. And I quite enjoyed it, really. It was very different. I think I only went there for like an hour once a week, so it wasn't that much. But then again, I think those two experiences have really, really helped me with getting onto the ABA therapy role that I did with Amal. So those were the experiences that I was able to talk about. And I also did some work with City Buddy as well. So I was paired up with a first year and then second year when I went into third year. So yeah, I did that as well. So what I would just recommend everyone to do is just don't think that you have to only start your journey once you graduate. There's steps and there's opportunities that's available during your undergraduate year that you can kind of do, and it would really help you as well once you graduate. And that's something that you can put in your CV, something that you can talk about. But it's not more so what you do, it's like what are the skills that you gain from that.
Yes.
For example, when I was doing PIP, I kind of understood how to use psychology in real life. So always just focus on what you gain, not so much on what you did.
Okay, that's fantastic. I think somebody in a direct messaged me for links for both of these jobs. If you go on our Moodle page, careers page, under educational psychology, both of these PIPs, Pursuing Independent something paths. Yes, it's there, and Coach Bright is also there. So, yes, I think you can find both of these, and I think it's really nice. I mean, I think it's really cool that you say, "Oh, you should do work experience," because I'm always like work experience. City Buddies, okay, I don't care about City Buddies, but it seems like it did you really well, and I really like. I mean, you can see you're really reflected. I think it's very impressive to see kind of like how the way you talk about the experience. It's also something I think it's harder to kind of just tell people, but the reflection about it's not just what you do as you end it, right? It's kind of like how you reflect on it, how you understand it. I think last week and all our speakers always highlight that. Okay, fantastic. So you did also done the ABA. So I think Amal and Dahaba did the ABA therapy, and Samaya did the mental health support worker. I just shortened it's either trainee graduate or graduate trainee. I can't keep that straight. Role, and we pick up there. But now we come to like Julia. Julia, you did something completely different. I think it's fair to say that you realized during your studying that you do not want to do anything clinical or educational or tube psychology.
Or psychology at all.
Yes. So, and I think it's also something that's for me often much, much harder to kind of help students with because it's less clear, right? I think it's easy to kind of say, oh, if you want to become an educational psychologist or organizational clinical counseling, these are the ways. But I think a lot of you guys who are here will feel, okay, maybe, psychology is not really my thing, which makes it much harder. Julia, how did you realize that psychology, you don't want to do something traditionally psychology? And yes, how did you approach that?
Funnily enough, I graduated in 2019 as well. So we all graduated together. It's just that we didn't know each other. But I guess I was one of those people that gets like towards the end of the degree and like, okay, the pressure and like anxiety starts building up because you have to do something. But I think I got through a point where I was like, I think everyone keeps telling you psychology is great, you can do anything with it. And then I got to this point and I was like, okay, but what?
Yes.
It's not, it's like, okay, where do I go? Where do I start? So I think for me, end of third year was this kind of bit of existential crisis to find out where I was going to go, because I really like psychology. I loved studying it. So it's super interesting. I still like to read about it and I like a lot of stuff about it, but I couldn't see myself in anything that we were being taught of like for life. I just couldn't see myself. I tried a few things. I did loads of research behind it. And there were a lot of things that I liked. I started from the modules and I was like, okay, let me see which modules I like and let me see what I can do with it. But then I would do some research and be like, okay, I'm not convinced. I don't know where to go with this. Maybe it's not psychology. So I guess I started to look at what I was doing in third year that I actually liked. And I picked as the electives consumer behavior and judgment and decision making. And they were quite similar. There was quite a bit of overlap in the theories, but I really liked those. And I ended up doing my dissertation on something about behavioral economics. And I realized that I was looking at the marketing side of it as well, even if it was not something that I consciously thought about. But I realized that a bit after I went into that on the psychology side, I wanted to know more of the marketing side. It's like, okay, I kind of now I have an understanding of what the psychology side is. I wonder what the marketing side is if that is something that I would actually enjoy. And then after I graduated in 2019, I knew I wanted to do a master's because, again, I had this feeling that, of course, I wasn't ready for a job because I didn't know what my path was. I had no plan, and I'm kind of still figuring out, if I have to be honest. I think I took the next steps, but I don't have a clear path in front of me. But I guess after I graduated, I knew I wanted to do a master's, but I didn't want to risk getting into another course, getting another degree, and then ending up with another degree and not knowing what to do with it. So even though I had a lot of pressure into going straight into a master's in September 2019, I decided to take a step back and use maybe a year, we could call it a gap year, but kind of a gap year, to maybe start getting into some work experience, some internships, and see what I could find. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try out different things. I have a general idea of what I could like. I think I know where my interests are. So I want to try different things, do different work experiences, do different internships, and then maybe September 2020, then 2021, I can do a master's. But then COVID came. So I did a work experience in September 2020. And then I started doing one in September 2019. Then I started doing one in January 2020 until March 2020. And then unfortunately COVID came. So I guess my process into deciding where to go went on in also during the process of applying for a master's. So I still kept it broad. I applied to different masters, a lot of them. And then I did a lot of research while applying for masters, and I was trying to see which one was the best while applying.
Could I just, Julia, could I stop here? Because I think, so some things that I really like about the way you approached it, I think it's more often than not, people might end with the degree and feel like, I'm not really sure what I should do. I think one thing I always really strongly recommend against is just doing another broad master's. So there are these kind of masters out there where it's I don't know, clinical and behavioral organizational psychology. I'm making this up, but it's basically, here's another master, so you don't have to try and figure out what you do. And at the end of the master, they tell you, oh, you can do everything with this master, and you're still not really, you didn't really learn anything specific. It didn't really enhance any of your chances, but you were just kind of like doing something because you were afraid. And I think it's really cool that you didn't do that. I think the other thing which I always liked about the way you approached it, you were very proactive. You always like worked for agencies. You try to kind of get into different areas. It's not that you're not a person who sits about and doesn't do anything, right? You try to actively get experience and sample some things.
I kind of had to. The thing, I felt like I had to start from zero, like honestly, because I did some work experience during the degree, but that was psychology related because I started like intentionally wanting to work in psychology. I did some volunteering like with children and then like a mental health placement. But then when I actually graduated, I was like, okay, if I want to move industry, I need to get it from somewhere. Or because I wasn't convinced where I was going, I had to start from somewhere. I think during my third year, I had this idea that loads of us have, that one day we just, as you were saying before, we just wake up and we know what we want to do. Or we keep hoping that something would just appear in our dreams. I was like, okay, someone's going to tell me what I have to do, but no one does. So I started just having a look at what I was already doing in terms of personal interest, and just trying to relate that in some kind of master's, or it could be a job. But for me, I felt I needed a master's because yes, psychology gives you very good skills, but moving industry and going into digital marketing, I couldn't go into a job, I felt, with the experience and the knowledge I had. But from what you said before, one of the masters I applied to was a very broad master's because I was in between marketing and communications at the beginning. And one of the courses I applied to was actually something around marketing, communications, and PR.
I remember, yes. Wasn't it a Leeds or something like that?
Yeah, it was a university. I really liked the course because I was in that in-between kind of area. But then I talked to a lot of people and I was like, do you think it's worth it for me to do a master's and then having this title, which could get me into communications or into marketing? And then I saw this very specific course at King's College that I'm doing now at digital marketing. And I was like, that's gonna be so much better and be so, it's good because it's specific, but it's still for people that don't come from a marketing or like economics degree.
Yes.
So, but at the end of the day, the title is quite specific and it gives you a better direction, I guess.
Yes, I think at some point it's good to kind of lose all the plan Bs and just have one broad. So that like, okay.
I think at the master's level, it definitely is, because at least for me, that I don't intend, like I'm not planning to do a PhD. I'm like, okay, the master's, I want to get out of the master's and I'm ready to work and I've got all the cards in place.
One thing I really liked that you did to figure out your master's, and then maybe we come back to the others. You contacted people on LinkedIn who did the masters, right? Or who were on the masters and asked them how it is, right? And I think that's a really clever thing if you ever think about. So just to say like, hey, I mean, I don't know, some of you might have come to City Open Days or something like that. I went to open secondary schools open days for my daughter, but it's like, you don't really get a good impression what's going on because everybody's on their best behavior and they tell you how awesome everything is, right? So I thought this was really clever because if there are students, why wouldn't you, I'm on this master, but actually it's not that good. I think that's,
Well, yeah, also because it was COVID, so I couldn't really go and see anything. I applied during COVID. It was like, I think April of last year. So yeah, it's a bit of a stalker thing to do. But again, because I was still in this very gray area of figuring out, it's like the best way is actually to get feedback from people that just did it. So yeah, that's why I just reached out on LinkedIn to people that did the masters and generally asked them if I could call them and have a chat, and some people were willing to do it. So I actually, at the end of the day, I managed to talk to like at least one person from each course, and that definitely helped me with the choice.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I think, like, okay, calling, wow, I wouldn't do that. But it's like, maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Reached out first on LinkedIn, and I was like,
Yes.
would you mind?
Yeah, but I think it's really, I mean, most is like, as you can see in this event, as you can see next week, I think as you see yesterday, some students organized a different event. I think people are, when you reach out to them, it's just like to all the students who are listening, right? Just like reach out. People are more happy to talk about themselves. We all like to talk about ourselves, but also to help. I think it's like, it's really good. Okay, could we, Julia, we come back to you and you tell us a little bit how the master's is. Maybe Amal and Dahaba, you're kind of like, you're both doing the ABA. What does it stand for? It has something, autistic behavioral.
Applied behavioral analysis.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, you don't both do that, but you're not doing this now. Maybe both of you can tell us a little bit what you're like, what happened thereafter, after you did your therapy. Yeah, you probably worked a little bit as ABA therapist, right? And then maybe just take it from there. I don't know, Amal, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So as I said before, I wanted to go into the counselling doctorate route. So what I did was I looked at the entry requirements and what they wanted. So they wanted a counselling skills certificate. So I did that with my postgraduate certificate in counselling psychology, which I strongly recommend if any of you are interested in counselling psychology, as it's not an easy decision doing a doctorate, especially when it's not funded. So I think it's wise to maybe do it. It gives you really good skills and also an insight into what counselling psychology is. So I did that, and then I was thinking, okay, I need more mental health experience. So I actually went on and did an honorary assistant psychologist role. So I applied for it and I worked within an IAP service. So very similar to what Samia said in terms of her role. So I did mental health assessment with clients over the phone, and that was my first clinical experience that I gained. In terms of getting an honorary assistant psychologist position, they are quite competitive. They're not as competitive as APs, as they are unpaid. And I think there's that added thing of, do I want to do a job that's unpaid when you want to make money? So I think if you are doing an honorary assistant psychologist position job, I'd recommend maybe only doing it for 1 day a week. That's what I did. And I think it's not about the quantity of hours that you do, it's more about what you gain within those hours. So I did it for 9 to 5 every Monday. And again, I was working from home because I started during the pandemic. And from that role, I gained a lot in terms of, I spoke to 6 different clients a day. I did loads of mental health assessments. I understood more about the contextual factors of mental health, how it's not just mental health by itself, other factors impact people's mental health as well, and also like working as part of a team. So I guess that was my experience for the doctorate. I then tried to find paid positions, which was really hard. And that's when I started my journey of applying for assistant psychologist positions. And in total, I spent 3 months applying for AP positions. So that is quite a while if you think about it. And I'd probably applied to maybe 10 jobs a week. So
Wow.
it's quite a lot, I think. I'm not trying to put anyone off, because I think I'd rather be honest than just say it was easy. It wasn't easy. Like, they are very
But these are
competitive.
hundreds of.
Yeah, I think I probably applied to like almost 100 AP jobs. Like, because with NHS jobs, they release loads of AP jobs, like loads. Sometimes they might release 5 in a day, but then on the flip side, they do get removed as soon as they put it on. Like,
So when you applied for that, like, man, that's crazy. It's like 100 applications. I mean, it's somewhat good to hear that there's so many roles out there, but it's just like, I mean, how did you, I would love to hear, how did you handle like the constant no? Why do you think, and like, why? It seems like, I mean, you're applying, right? What do you think at the end made a difference, or is it just a little bit random, or like, how did you?
I feel like it's a bit of both. I think definitely it is luck. Like, it's based on who else applies for the job. Sometimes not a lot of people apply for it. Sometimes loads of people apply for it. And also, I think it's how you write the application, and that's what. So I would like recommend networking and trying to get a mentor if you can, possibly in the field of psychology. So within my honorary assistant psychologist role, I was assigned a mentor. So she was an assistant psychologist who's been working as an assistant psychologist for like over a year, and she really helped me with my applications, and I think that made the difference. In terms of like what was different in my application, I think it's the way I wrote it. It's not my experience, it's the way I spoke about my experience. So in psychology, there's a big emphasis of being reflective. Like, they know what you've done, like they can see on your job profile what you've done, but it's what you learned from it and how you can apply it to the assistant psychologist role. And also, do be in particular about the experiences that you've done. Like some people might have lots of experiences, and yeah, they're all amazing. But pick the relevant ones. For example, if you're applying for an AP job that's based in a CAM setting, so working with children, and you've got a few experiences working with children, but loads working with adults, focus on the children experience because that's what they're looking for. And like with AP jobs, particularly with the NHS, they have a person specification, and that's what they're looking for. And I honestly think they use it as a mark scheme. So what I do is I'd copy and paste sections from the person spec into my statement. And that's when I saw that I'd get interviews. I think it's just having those key tricks up your sleeves and just persevere and don't take it personal. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was very upset when I got rejections. Like sometimes they won't even reject you, they just not reply to you, and that's quite normalized. And I think it's quite sad, particularly like we're working in the field of psychology, to help others with their mental health, but we're jeopardizing our own with all these job applications. So just be kind to yourself and just don't take it personal. Network as much as you can as well, and watch YouTube videos. Like honest to God, like YouTube videos help so much. And there's someone called the Psych Assist. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's absolutely amazing. So he's currently doing the health psychology doctorate. He has loads of information on like AP interviews and application tips and interview tips. And also there was this assistant psychologist called Sharon B. Psych. So her videos really helped me with my applications as well. So I think definitely outsource with like advice and stuff, but also be kind to yourself as well, because it is quite a grueling process, I found.
So that, yeah, I mean, it sounds terrible. It's like, yes, like dozens and dozens of applications. I think this is often, I feel like also one kind of underappreciated aspect of volunteering, that like the people feel like, wow, she came in here, she worked for free. We want to give something back. And then they help you with your applications, right? I think often sometimes people feel like, oh, how do I find a mentor? What does a mentor mean? Sorry. And it means that you can say, hey, can you look at my application? Right? That's kind of like, and that's what you need to have. And I think that's often what you get really well from if you volunteer and the people like you, that's like one step in. Okay, that sounds great. I mean, so you finally, Amal, you got it.
Yeah, so I had my interview in December. So good thing is they literally call you back on the same day if you got the job or not. So in total, I had 2 assistant psychologist interviews. They were both within a forensic setting. So one of them was community, so I'd be working from home, and the other was working within a women's prison. So I had my interviews back to back. Unfortunately, I didn't get the community one, but I was offered the one working in the prison. And I started mid-January, and I've been there for just over 2 months, and it's going really well. Like,
okay, so could you tell us a little bit, like a minute, what was like, what are you doing in a women's prison as an assistant psychologist? Yeah.
Yeah, so within like the prison, we run an IAP service. It's very similar to the community. So I, as an assistant psychologist, I work at a step 2 level. So I do one-to-one interventions based on guided self-help. So we basically work through anxiety and low mood booklets, as well as other like techniques that we use within a prison. Like, as you can imagine, there's a lot of self-harm and suicidal thoughts. So there's that added risk element to it. So a lot of our techniques are based on risk management, and also a lot of the women that I work with, they do have like past history of trauma and a lot of like childhood adversities as well. So again, like it's quite complex. I can, like, if I'm honest with you, but I have attended quite a bit of training. So as part of my role, I attended DBT training. So that's dialectical behavioral therapy. So a bit more about self-harm management, and also
sorry,
CBT.
the DBT, what does DBT?
It's dialectical behavioral therapy. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's more for working with individuals with personality disorders and managing self-harm, because yeah, like I work with a lot of women with diagnosis of personality disorders, and it's quite high within the prison population.
Yes.
But what I like about my role is just that it's very concentrated, because you literally, it feels like you've cut off from the outside world because you are in a prison and you're working with a wide range of professionals. So I work with psychiatrists, psychotherapists, clinical psychologists, and they do have like really good mental health services as well. And I think it's given me a lot of good reflection points as well. I think my biggest advice is, particularly if you want to go down the counselling or clinical route, try to gain a lot of experiences in different areas, because working in a forensic setting is so different to working in, like, for example, a CAM setting or working in a community setting. So you would have like a lot of different reflection points to speak about.
Okay, that sounds great. I think I'm mindful of the time. Could I ask you one final question? I think we're like, because if I want to hear I think in 2 weeks' time we have how to become a counseling psychologist, and we talk more about this. But could you just say like, why do you want to do counseling, not clinical? Because now you have like you've been an ABA therapist, you have an honorary, and you're an AP. You could go either way, right? Why is it counseling and
Yeah.
not clinical?
I think the main difference is the teaching. So with counselling, you're trained in more than one modality. So I think clinical is primarily based on CBT. With counselling, you get taught CBT, psychodynamic, and person-centered. And I also think it's the teaching structure that I prefer for counselling. So it's not full time. So you have uni with City, for example, you're in uni 1 day a week, and then you have placements 2 days a week, and it's not restricted to the NHS. So I can do placements in a wide range of settings, because I think for me personally, I'd love to end up working in a school setting. So it gives me that flexibility of my placements within counseling psychology. And I think the ethos of counseling psychology, like the humanistic underpinnings, that it's not diagnosis driven, and it's based on like believing that all individuals have ability to live a meaningful life. Like it's very positive and warm. And I think those were like a few characteristics which drew me to counseling over clinical, I'd say.
Wow. Okay. You're very reflected on it. It's very impressive how you talk about it. Really cool. Yes. I mean, I think I always said like counseling is much more holistic, but I think clinical psychologists often get very upset if you say that. It's like, we are also holistic. So I don't want to get involved in that. Yes. Okay. Fantastic. That was an amazing answer. Dahaba, could you say quickly kind of, I think we don't have to feel rushed, but just you finish your ABA education, your therapist, but you also moved on, right? But you do something slightly different. I think really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So at the moment, I am an education mental health practitioner. I'm in my training year. So what this role basically is a training course and a role that is funded by the NHS. So I currently attend uni 3 days a week. And what I learn is, so basically the role involves delivering low intensity intervention to children and young people in schools. And this role kind of came about based on, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but the government is like heavily focusing on giving children and young people mental health support, especially within the education as well, as CAMHS is, it takes a lot for children to actually get onto the CAMHS, to meet the threshold for CAMHS. So that's why this role was kind of created, and it was recently created. It's a role that's funded. So I work with children and young people in schools, and I deliver low intensity interventions based on principles of CBT. And for primary school children, I work with parents to I kind of teach the parents the tools that they need to kind of work with their children. And in secondary school, you get to directly work with the children and young people. So it's an NHS role, and I would highly recommend you to kind of look it up. And I think
this
earlier,
is kind of like now, but it's just like because I have not heard of this before we met online. I know like next week we talk about psychological well-being practitioner. One of our ex-students is coming in talking about like that. And is that basically kind of like the same in an educational setting, and you have a year-long degree, and you like 2 days you're at university, 3 days you're working, and it's paid, right? That's kind of the framework. Okay, that sounds amazing.
Yes, exactly. And I think that probably one of the reasons why you didn't hear about it is because it's a role that was recently created. I think it's only been created in the last 2 to 3 years. I'm not too sure. And I remember coming across it as soon as I graduated, but I was a bit apprehensive in like applying to it, because I was like, I don't really have like intense experience working with children and young people. But I think the requirements for the role is just to have experience working with children for like a year. And so I would just say it's more of just what you gain from from the experiences. And as Amal was saying earlier, I would really not recommend to kind of just list exactly the roles that you did or what duties you carried out. That is definitely not a way to be successful in the role or to even get onto the role. I think it's more of just what did you learn from that? What skills has it improved? So when you're writing your personal statement, just be very mindful of that, because it's really easy to kind of fall into the trap of just saying, oh, I spoke to parents, or I spoke with children, or I did this with children. But okay, they can tell from that. But what did you learn about that? What skills has it improved? I think that's what you need to really focus on. And I think Andreas kind of mentioned earlier about messaging people on LinkedIn. I think I would really recommend everyone to kind of just do that as well. If there's any role in particular that you're interested in, just search up the role, and then you will see loads of people that do it, and just message them. I get so many messages. I've messaged people before as well, and you would be surprised, let's just say more people reply to you than not, and people are really helpful because they have been through the struggles. So I would just like to emphasize that a lot, really.
All right, that's great. So so you're going on as like your next, are you planning to become an educational psychologist? Are you planning to apply for the doctorate at some point? Is that your...
Yeah. So right now my plans are to get to do the educational psychology doctorate. Hopefully soon, but yeah. Yes,
I think that sounds great. That's amazing. I think that Amar, who comes, oh no, it's Shah, sorry. He comes next week. He basically kind of, and maybe Samia, that's like a transition to you back to the clinical psychology. I think he did a psychological well-being practitioner. Then he became a high intensity therapist. I think it has cognitive therapy, and then he went on to the doctorate. And I thought, he said like he liked each and every job and he was happy to do it, but he thought like, why not try the next one? Why not try the next one? Samia, can you tell us a little bit about like where did we stop? Yes, you were a mental support worker and mental health support worker. What happened next?
So whilst doing my mental health graduate, even I am getting it confused now, graduate mental health worker role, I think it was around, I'd say October last year, 2020, is when I realized that I need to start applying for jobs because this post is coming to an end, and the anxiety started to build up again. So similar to Amal, I went through a process of applying for so many jobs. These were AP jobs, anything that was basically above what I had just done now, because I felt like I gained immense experience. And within my role, it was a lot of reflection that I actually learned. I don't think I knew how to reflect on my experiences, but the essays I wrote forced me to do that. And then in the end, that's essentially how I did all my applications as well. So what I did was I applied for the PWP, the Psychological Wellbeing Practitioner role, and successfully got an interview and successfully got in. But I also applied for the new clinical associate psychologist post. That I'm literally the cohort 1 at the moment, so it's in London, and that one I also got the interview for it and then got on. So it was basically trying to make that decision as to what I'm going to get onto. But I think I chose the clinical associate psychologist role one more because you can work more flexibly. So you work with CBT as well, but you also get to do DBT. So similar to what Amal said, dialectical behavioral therapy. We are also so it's called like a transdiagnostic module where you use different theories to inform your practice for an individual client. So it's not like structured. You don't directly work with like CBT, but you can work with acceptance, commitment therapy, for example, and use some elements of that to help with your interventions in the sessions you have with clients. So that's the role I got. Sorry, I kind of got sidetracked, but I got into the clinical associate psychologist role. It's 18 months and you do a master's where you attend 2 days a week at UCL. So that's what I'm currently doing, and that's all online at the moment. And then 3 days a week, I work in a secondary care community mental health team. And so I work alongside counselling psychologists, clinical psychologists, social workers, the whole lot, occupational therapists, so an entire team that work with all the service users or clients that come in, and that's how we help them. So it's helping them both psychologically, but also socially as well. So that's what I'm currently doing. And at the moment, I'm still
this is paid, right?
it's band 5, so I don't know if you guys know the bands at NHS, but that's quite high for a training course. So
You're rich.
Yeah, I think it's a really good. I think that was what is quite attractive as well, to see that they rolled out this complete new thing where it's in the process of being accredited by the BPS at the moment as well. And so it's more promising because you get trained at band 5 and with the hopes of getting onto the band 6 afterwards. But I also feel like what you gain from that, if you want to get onto the clinical doctorate afterwards, it almost feels like it's a prerequisite. Basically, there's a lot of reflection, there's a lot of role plays in our current studies, there's a lot of so I said reflection, there's role plays, there's ways where you can speak to others and see how they basically carry out their work and see what you can basically learn from that. So a lot of mentalizing, and all these skills that I'm gaining at the moment feels almost like, wow, you know, these are amazing stuff. But when I was in my final year, all I kept thinking about is my long-term goal and getting onto the clinical doctorate. But at the moment, it's like looking at the here and now and looking at currently what I'm doing. And it feels amazing to actually be in this position. I almost feel like I'm privileged to be able to sit in these classes and learn so much, and then using exactly what I just learned back into work, taking part of clinical supervision. So my clinical supervisor is a consultant clinical psychologist. So gaining that kind of experience, also knowing that you don't have to sit with the discomfort of sometimes maybe hearing very emotive, sensitive information from a client, but then taking that back to supervision and seeing how you can unpack that, because then that's the best way that you can be a good practitioner. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment.
All right, amazing. So, okay, that's good, because there's another thing that I felt like I'm not sure what that is, but it's good. It's cohort number 1. Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, I think this might go a little bit too deep into it, but it seems like there's psychological well-being practitioner, there's kind of, which is often or sometimes called low intensity therapist, right? Then you have high intensity therapist, and you have yours, which almost looks a little bit like it combines the two. Is that kind of?
With my one, it's bang in the middle of what APs do and the trainee clinical psychologists. So they're essentially meant to fill the skills gap that's in between those two posts. Because right now we're literally the first cohort, it's more like we're trying to see how that works and what that looks like. But that's exactly why we're not doing completely CBT work. So it has a bit like, it's a bit more holistic, and it has a bit more work around it, and seeing what exactly you need to work with the client. So sometimes you see them from 6 to 12 sessions, and then again going more flexibly and seeing they need more support. So this is what we need to do now. This is what we're going to do next. So with because I'm working community setting at the moment, it can also take the form of like just going for a walk with them and have a conversation, or going to their homes and can delivering the interventions that way, or they're coming to the service as well. But clinical associate psychologists only work with adults, and so it's adult mental health, and it can also take the form of inpatient as well. But my one at the moment, I'm community mental health team.
Okay, that sounds great. Kind of while you were talking, I thought like, oh, I can't wait to see in a year or two and hear what you guys are doing. Very, very cool. Very impressive. So it seems like you're on your way to become eventually a clinical psychologist, an educational psychologist, and a counseling psychologist. So I hold tight to your email addresses, so then I just lure you in each year. Julia, could we kind of hear a little bit about like how is the marketing masters, is it digital marketing masters the King's? I think we started a little bit before we recorded a chat about this, and then could you tell us a little bit like what types of jobs you consider after graduating? What could you do? What are you interested in doing?
I think so. I got into marketing, as I told you before, starting from maybe the consumer behavior side, because I was coming from psychology and I thought that was super interesting. But then in the process of like applying and getting in and actually starting studying, I kind of saw that, okay, I actually want to focus my outside interests even more in what I'm doing and in what I'm trying to build as a career. So ultimately, the goal would be to work in the creative industries as a marketer. because also I kind of started working on projects, like personal projects, completely outside of uni, with friends that are actually in the creative industry and stuff like that. And I thought that that's really what motivates me to do the job, I would say, and also to work on things on the side that I would do for my own interest and hobby. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I want to find in a job. I think also because it's something that helped me definitely during the process of finding what to do and during the masters as well. It's definitely looking at what I was doing in my own time. And I think that's something that could help anyone that's kind of lost and doesn't know what to do. So once I get my degree, it's going to be in September, the idea is definitely to go into the creative industry, entertainment maybe more, sector, and work as a marketer there.
You were quite interested, Sergio, you were quite interested in kind of working for like a theater or something,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. That's quite super competitive as well to get into marketing of,
yeah, it is. That's what I tried to do before joining the masters as well. I tried to get some work experience in the industry, even if it wasn't necessarily a marketing position, because I didn't have the skills and the knowledge yet. In like before coronavirus, I started doing some work here and there. Like I worked for a company that's like that works with filmmakers, and then I worked in an agency, like a creative agency. So it wasn't necessarily a marketing position, but I started getting some experience in the industry, thinking, okay, so when I'm going to get my degree, I can kind of combine the marketing knowledge and maybe the beginning of some kind of work experience in the industry, to get what I want, hopefully. But it's still like a long road to get there, I feel.
Okay, I'm excited to see where you are next year. Yeah, when you're hopefully all coming back, and then we talk about, and you're hopefully no pandemic anymore. But this was absolutely fantastic. I think we're running a little bit out of time. I think I would just kind of stop the recording, and if you guys feel if that's okay with you, we could see if somebody has a question just put it in the chat. I think this was amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, before I stop the recording, I just want to have it on recorded. Thank you, that I'm very, very grateful. I learned a lot, which is the most important thing, right? That's why we do these events, that I learned something. Now, of course, it's for nobody's laughing. It's like, what is he talking about? Okay, so maybe I think if I learned a lot of new jobs. I think it was lovely hearing you talk about your jobs and seeing like all of you, how you have grown. And I think if you you can see how much you have learned from your experience. I'm really excited to see how you will, what you will do with your future career. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time, talking to us, answering my stupid questions, and making something fantastic out of it. And yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.